All right. Dear Supreme Overlord and Master of the Mailbag, this is from Michael. Over the last year, I have turned away from atheism, and thanks to mostly you and a few others like you, I am now a firm believer in God. Good. My wife and I have made it a point to go to church this year, and after going, I still seem to be missing the connection between God and Jesus. We've been going to a Christian church, and it seems they use the terms God and Jesus interchangeably, but I have trouble thinking of the two in the same way. I know what the Bible says mostly, and I started reading your book, The Great Good Thing, but I was hoping you could help me understand the connection in the way that you see it. First, if you finish The Great Good Thing, which is my memoir of my conversion, it does talk a lot about this, and why ultimately I came to feel that Jesus was the God that I was worshiping. I mean, this is one of the things I never really try to convince people to become Christians, because I think if you convince people to believe in God, the logic of God, they'll suddenly realize that the logic of God and the logic of Jesus are the same, and that's kind of a coincidence, like kind of a strange coincidence that tends to lead you to become a Christian. But let's say this. Let's put it this way. Everything has a purpose. My leftist tear tumblers is here to collect and preserve my leftist tears. I use it for that purpose. My computer has a purpose. I use it for that purpose. When we relate to God, we are looking for our purpose. We're looking for what is the point of us, because we are made in the image of God. But no one has seen God. No one has ever seen God the Father, the Lord in heaven. What we have seen is we have seen God as he is as a man. We have seen this in Jesus Christ. And in seeing this, we start to realize what we are for. Now, each of us is for something different in some ways, but we're also for God. So we're all for the same thing, but each of us is for the same thing in a different way. And in our relationship to Jesus, what you do is you find out that starts to come true. If you don't have that, you just have this amorphous maker up there in the sky, then God begins to look very much like you. Jesus keeps that from happening. Jesus, because he's such a strong personality, because he said certain things, because there's no getting away from the things that he said, he shows you that there's certain part that God, just like everything else that exists, has a nature, right? People who say, oh, all religions lead to God are speaking nonsense, right? Because everything that exists has a nature. A microphone is a microphone and not a leftist tears tumbler. Everything has a nature, and God is God, and he is not God, okay? And so when you see God as a human being, as you would relate to him, you see Jesus Christ. And one of the really fascinating things, and this has been the way I've been reading the Bible for the last 2 or 3 years, is as a way of getting to know Jesus, because he's not the person that people tell you he is. He's not always the person that the church tells you he is. He's not always the person that your pastor tells you he is. But in the Gospels, you do see him, and he is an unmistakable personality saying unmistakable things. It makes a big difference whether you are reading the words of Jesus Christ as the words of a human being, of a person, or whether you're reading them as a set of rules. Christianity is the one religion that is not a set of rules. It is not a set of rules. It is simply good news. It is something that happened that is good. And when Jesus says some weird things, he says stuff like, turn the other cheek. If somebody slaps you, turn the other cheek. Well, do you always do that? If somebody slaps your wife, do you turn the other cheek? What does that mean? But if you are relating to Jesus and reading him in context and reading him in his life in context, you start to realize that he was presenting an entire philosophy, an entire way of being that God has when he does the human thing. And since you are doing the human thing and he is doing the human thing, it is a good way to guide yourself. What you find when you follow Jesus is yourself. That's what you find. And I don't think that happens if you just have this amorphous idea of God as being a nice guy. Then you just start imposing your values on him, as opposed to the other way around, where you let his values shape you. And I think that is the important part about Jesus. As for the logic of Jesus and why it makes sense to me, I think The Great Good Thing is a good thing to read, because it does explain a lot of that.